You know, there's something about Lagos that makes people forget where they came from. The glittering towers of Victoria Island, the fancy cars on Lekki Epe Expressway, the exclusive clubs where champagne flows like water. In this city of dreams and schemes, some people climb so high they can no longer see the ground beneath them. This is a story about pride, about assumptions, and about the dangerous game we play when we judge people by their appearance. Her name was Chidinma Okafor, but everyone called her Mrs. O. She was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in West Africa. At 38 years old, she had everything: a mansion in Banana Island, a fleet of luxury cars, and a reputation that opened every door in Lagos. Her company, DigiNigeria Solutions, had just secured a $50 million investment from international partners, and she was everywhere: on magazine covers, at business conferences, on the Forbes Africa list. But success had changed her. The young woman who once hawked pure water in Oshodi to support her education was now a distant memory. She had buried that past so deep, sometimes even she forgot it existed. At the gate of her Banana Island mansion stood Emmanuel. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and weathered hands that told stories of a life lived fully. Every morning, he opened the gate for Mrs. O's convoy. Every evening, he closed it behind her. He wore his simple security uniform with dignity, greeted everyone with respect, and never complained about the long hours under the harsh Lagos sun. Mrs. O barely noticed him. To her, Emmanuel was just the gateman, part of the furniture, part of the background noise of her successful life. The invitation came on a Monday morning. The British High Commissioner was hosting an exclusive garden party at his residence in Ikoyi. Only the crème de la crème of Lagos society would be there: ministers, business moguls, diplomats, and celebrities. Mrs. O was thrilled. This was exactly where she belonged, among the powerful and influential. She spent the entire week preparing: a new dress from a designer boutique in London, flown in specially; shoes from Milan; hair and makeup by the most expensive stylists in Lagos. She had to look perfect. She had to remind everyone why she was the queen of Lagos tech scene. The day of the party arrived. As her driver prepared the Bentley, Mrs. O stepped out of her house looking absolutely stunning. Her dress shimmered in the afternoon sun, her jewelry sparkled, and her confidence radiated like a force field around her. Emmanuel opened the gate as usual, a polite smile on his face. As the car began to move, something unexpected happened. Another car pulled up to the gate, a modest Toyota Camry, a bit old but well-maintained. The driver rolled down the window and greeted Emmanuel warmly. Mrs. O's driver had to pause, waiting for the other car to clear the narrow driveway. Through her tinted window, Mrs. O watched as Emmanuel walked to the Toyota, and to her absolute shock, he opened the back door and climbed in. He was leaving, in regular clothes, a simple but neat traditional outfit. Her eyebrows shot up. Where was the gateman going dressed like that, and why did he look so comfortable, so dignified? She dismissed the thought quickly. Probably going to some village meeting or church gathering, nothing that concerned her. She had bigger things to think about. A party with the most important people in Lagos awaited. The British High Commissioner's residence was magnificent: manicured lawns, elegant decorations, waiters in crisp uniforms carrying trays of champagne and canapes. A live band played soft jazz in the background. The air smelled of expensive perfume and grilled prawns. Mrs. O made her entrance like she owned the place. She worked the crowd expertly, laughing at the right jokes, making the right connections, taking selfies that she would later post on Instagram with carefully crafted captions about excellence and success. She was in the middle of a conversation with a Lebanese businessman when she noticed a small commotion near the main entrance.
People were turning to look, conversations were pausing, and there was a ripple of excitement moving through the crowd. Someone important must have arrived. Mrs. O turned to look, her champagne glass halfway to her lips, and then she froze. Walking into the garden party, being greeted warmly by the British High Commissioner himself, was Emmanuel, her gateman. But he wasn't in his security uniform. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored agbada, the kind that screamed old money and quiet power. He walked with a confidence that seemed to command the space around him. Mrs. O blinked, once, twice. This had to be a mistake. Maybe it was someone who looked like Emmanuel. But no, it was definitely him, those same gentle eyes, that same dignified bearing. She watched in disbelief as the High Commissioner shook Emmanuel's hand warmly, patting him on the shoulder like an old friend. Diplomats and business leaders approached him with genuine respect. He was clearly not just an invited guest, he was an honored guest. Mrs. O's mind raced. What was happening? Had Emmanuel crashed the party? But how would a gateman even know about this exclusive event, let alone get past the tight security? She couldn't help herself, her curiosity mixed with confusion and a touch of anger. How dare he be here, in her space, among her people? She made her way through the crowd, determined to get to the bottom of this mystery. As she approached, she heard fragments of conversation. A senator was talking to Emmanuel about education policy. A bank executive was discussing microfinance initiatives. Everyone seemed to know him, to respect him. Mrs. O cleared her throat loudly. Emmanuel turned, and his eyes met hers. There was a flicker of recognition, but also something else. Amusement? Sadness? She couldn't quite tell. "Emmanuel," she said, her voice dripping with barely concealed disdain. "What are you doing here? Did you follow me? How did you even get in?" The conversations around them died down. People turned to look at the unfolding drama. The High Commissioner, sensing trouble, moved closer. Emmanuel smiled gently, that infuriating, calm smile. "Good evening, Mrs. Okafor. I was invited, just like you." "Invited?" Mrs. O laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You're my gate man. You open gates. You don't attend parties with diplomats and CEOs. This is embarrassing. You should leave before security removes you." The High Commissioner stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Okafor. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Professor Emmanuel Adeyemi is not only invited, he's the guest of honor tonight." Mrs. O felt the ground shift beneath her expensive shoes. "Professor? What professor? This man works for me. He opens my gate every day." Emmanuel's voice remained calm, without anger or resentment. "Mrs. Okafor, I do open your gate. You're correct about that. But that's not all I am." The High Commissioner continued, clearly uncomfortable, but committed to the truth. "Professor Adeyemi is one of Nigeria's most respected economists. He was the youngest person ever to receive a doctorate from Oxford University. He's advised 3 Nigerian presidents on economic policy. His research on sustainable development has influenced policy across Africa. He's written 12 books, 5 of which are mandatory reading in universities across the world." Mrs. O felt dizzy. The champagne glass trembled in her hand. Emmanuel spoke again, his voice gentle but firm. "Mrs. Okafor, I keep a journal. Every day I write down something I learned. Would you like to know what I learned from working as your gateman?" She couldn't speak, so she just nodded. "I learned that success without humility is just noise, that money without compassion is just paper, that power without kindness is just tyranny. And I learned that the most expensive education in the world can't teach you the value of a simple greeting, of recognizing the humanity in every person you meet."
He closed the notebook. "I don't tell you this to shame you, but to remind you. You came from Oshodi, Mrs. Okafor. You sold pure water under the sun. You know what it feels like to be invisible, to be looked through as if you don't exist. Somewhere on your journey to success, you forgot that feeling. You became the person who once made you feel small. The truth of his words cut deeper than any insult could have. Mrs. O felt something breaking inside her. The carefully constructed walls she'd built around her heart, the armor of arrogance she'd worn to protect herself from ever feeling vulnerable again. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears now flowing freely, ruining her expensive makeup. "I'm so sorry." Emmanuel nodded. "I forgive you, but more importantly, forgive yourself. We all lose our way sometimes. The question is, will you find your way back?" The High Commissioner, sensing that the moment needed privacy, gestured to the band to resume playing. Gradually, the crowd dispersed, giving Mrs. O and Emmanuel some space. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Mrs. O asked, her voice broken. Would it have mattered? Should it have mattered? The janitor at your office? The woman who cleans your house? The driver who takes you everywhere? Do they deserve kindness only if they have impressive titles and degrees? Or do they deserve it simply because they're human? Mrs. O had no answer. Or rather, she had the answer, but it shamed her to acknowledge it. Emmanuel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're not a bad person, Mrs. Okafor. You're just a person who forgot. But you can remember. You can change. You can be successful and kind, powerful and humble, wealthy and compassionate. These things are not contradictions. They're the ingredients of true greatness." That night changed Mrs. O's life. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, surely, like the way morning light gradually chases away darkness. She started seeing people, really seeing them. The security guard at her office building, whose name she learned was Tunde, and who was studying for a degree in accounting at night school. The woman who cleaned her house, whose name was Patience, and who sent money back to her village every month to support her sister's children. Her driver, whose name was Emeka, and who wrote poetry in his spare time, dreaming of publishing a book someday. She started a mentorship program at her company, specifically for young people from poor backgrounds, like she had once been. She set up scholarships. She visited schools in underprivileged areas. She used her voice, her platform, her success, not just to elevate herself, but to lift others. And every morning, when Emmanuel opened her gate, because he continued to work there, by choice, she would roll down her window, smile genuinely, and say, "Good morning, Professor. How are you today?" And he would smile back and reply, "I'm well, Mrs. Okafor. And how are you?" It was a simple exchange, nothing fancy, nothing that would make headlines or trend on social media, but it was everything. It was the acknowledgement of shared humanity. It was the recognition that every person, regardless of their position or title, deserves dignity and respect. 1 year after that fateful party, Mrs. O was invited to speak at a conference for young entrepreneurs. At the end of her speech about building successful businesses, she added something that wasn't in her prepared notes. "Before you chase success," she said, looking out at the hundreds of eager young faces, "know this. The measure of your success is not in your bank account, your job title, or the number of likes on your social media posts. The measure of your success is in how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. The cleaner, the gateman, the waiter, the person society has deemed less important. Because here's the truth, that took me too long to learn. We are all equal. We are all valuable. We are all deserving of kindness." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "I once had a gateman who was really a professor, but that shouldn't have mattered. He deserved my respect and kindness whether he was a professor or not, whether he had 12 books or none, whether he had advised presidents or had never left his village. He deserved it because he was human, because we all are." The applause that followed was thunderous, but more importantly, it was genuine, because truth resonates, truth transforms, truth sets us free from the prisons of our own making. In the end, Emmanuel taught Mrs. O what no business school could teach, what no amount of money could buy, what no title could confer. He taught her that true success is measured not by how high you climb, but by how many people you lift as you rise. Not by how much you accumulate, but by how much you give. Not by how loud your voice is, but by how carefully you listen. Not by how many people know your name, but by how many people you know by name. In Lagos, the city of hustlers and dreamers, of luxury and poverty existing side by side, where the gap between the rich and poor can feel as wide as the Atlantic Ocean, we all need this reminder. We all need to remember that behind every uniform, every humble job, every simple greeting, there's a human being with dreams, with dignity, with a story.
The next time you pass by the security guard at your building, the woman selling oranges by the roadside, the young man washing your car, or anyone else society has taught you to overlook, pause for a moment, see them, greet them, acknowledge their humanity. You never know who they really are, but more importantly, it shouldn't matter. Because in the end, we're all just people trying to find our way in this complicated, beautiful, challenging world. And the only thing that truly separates the great from the simply successful is the ability to remember this simple truth. Every single person you meet deserves your respect, your kindness, and your recognition of their inherent worth. Not because of what they can do for you, not because of their titles or their bank accounts, but simply because they exist, simply because they're human, simply because in the eyes of God and the universe, we are all equal. That gateman you ignore today might be a professor tomorrow, or he might remain a gateman all his life. Either way, he deserves your kindness. Either way, he deserves to be seen. The question is not who he is. The question is, who are you? And more importantly, who you want to be. The story of Mrs. O and Emmanuel spread quietly through Lagos, the way really important stories do, not with noise and fanfare, but in whispered conversations over lunch at Kilimanjaro restaurant, in boardrooms on the 20th floor of office towers, in church services on Sunday mornings, and in the beer parlors of Surulere where working-class men gathered after long days. People started looking at their own lives differently. A managing director at a bank realized he had never learned the name of the woman who cleaned his office for 5 years. A lawyer in Lekki discovered that her housekeeper had lost her husband and was raising 3 children alone, and she had never even asked. A politician who gave grand speeches about uplifting the masses couldn't remember the last time he actually spoke to the man who drove him everywhere. Lagos is a city of mirrors. If you look close enough, you'll always see yourself reflected back. 6 months after that conference speech, Mrs. O received a call. It was from a journalist at Channels Television. They wanted to do a feature story about her company's success. She agreed, but with one condition. She wanted Emmanuel to be part of the interview. The journalist was confused. The gateman? Why would we interview the gateman for a story about your tech company? Mrs. O smiled. Because he taught me everything that matters. The business school at Harvard taught me how to make money, but Emmanuel taught me how to be human. And between those 2 lessons, I can tell you which one is more valuable. The interview aired on a Tuesday evening. Millions of Nigerians gathered around their television sets, expecting another typical success story, another rags to riches tale about hustle and determination. What they got instead was something completely different. Emmanuel sat beside Mrs. O in the studio, comfortable in his simple attire, his white hair almost glowing under the studio lights. The journalist, a sharp woman named Bimpe, started with the obvious question. Professor Adiemi, you have a vast presence. You've shaped economic policy across Africa. You have a PhD from Oxford. Why on earth would you work as a gateman? Emmanuel leaned forward, his eyes twinkling with that gentle wisdom that comes from truly living. My dear, let me ask you something. What is work? Is it only valuable if it comes with a big title and a big salary? The man who collects our waste every morning at 5 a.m. while we're still sleeping in our comfortable beds, is he not working? The woman who fries a kara by the roadside in the hot sun to send her children to school, is she not working? He paused, letting the question settle. I became a gateman because I wanted to remember what real work feels like. I wanted to stand under the sun. I wanted to greet people. I wanted to be useful in a simple, direct way. For years, my work had been abstract, papers and policies and presentations. I needed to touch reality again. I needed to be grounded. Bimpe turned to Mrs. O. And you, Mrs. Okafor, you didn't know who he was? Mrs. O shook her head, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and enlightenment. I didn't know because I didn't care to know. That's the honest truth. To me, he was just the gateman. I saw his function, not his humanity. And that says everything about who I had become. But you've changed? Bimpe pressed. I'm changing, Mrs. O corrected. Change isn't an event, it's a process. Every day, I have to choose to see people. Every day, I have to fight against the arrogance that success breeds. Every day, I have to remember where I came from and who helped me along the way. She looked at Emmanuel with genuine affection. This man opens my gate every morning, but really he opened something much more important. He opened my eyes. He opened my heart. He opened my understanding of what true success actually means. Emmanuel smiled and added, you know what I've learned working as a gateman? I've learned that the people with the most power are often the ones with the least kindness, and the people with the least power are often the ones with the most dignity. The woman who sells vegetables at the market will share her last naira with someone who needs it more. The Donfo driver will stop to help someone stranded on the road, but the man in the Range Rover will drive past without even slowing down.
Why is that? Bimpe asked. Because poverty teaches empathy in a way that privilege never can. When you've been hungry, you understand hunger. When you've been invisible, you see invisible people. When you've struggled, you recognize struggle. But when you've only known comfort, when you've only known power, when you've only known success, it's easy to forget that most people are fighting battles you know nothing about. Mrs. O nodded vigorously. He's absolutely right. I had forgotten my own battles. I had forgotten what it felt like to be poor, to be dismissed, to be treated like I didn't matter. Success gave me amnesia, and that amnesia almost destroyed the person I had worked so hard to become. The interview continued for another 30 minutes. They talked about dignity and respect, about power and humility, about what it means to truly succeed in life.
By the time it ended, the channel's television phone lines were flooded, people calling in, crying, sharing their own stories of being overlooked or of overlooking others. The video went viral, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa and beyond. It was shared millions of times on social media. News outlets in Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and even international publications picked up the story. "The professor who became a gateman" was the headline that appeared everywhere. But Emmanuel wasn't interested in the fame. He continued his work at Mrs. O's gate, continued his charity work, continued living his quiet, purposeful life. He had learned long ago that real impact happens not in the spotlight, but in the small, daily choices we make about how to treat one another. Mrs. O's company culture transformed completely. She instituted a new policy. Once a month, every executive in the company had to spend a full day working alongside the support staff. The CFO spent a day with the cleaners. The head of technology spent a day with security. The head of marketing spent a day in the company kitchen. At first, the executives grumbled. This was beneath them. They hadn't gotten MBAs to mop floors and serve food, but Mrs. O was insistent. "You'll do it or you'll find another company to work for. I'm not asking, I'm telling." The results were remarkable. The CFO discovered that the woman who cleaned his office was supporting 6 people on her salary and still managed to smile every day. He approved an immediate pay rise for all support staff. The head of technology learned that the security guard at the main entrance had ideas about improving the company's security systems that were actually brilliant. He hired him as a consultant. The head of marketing found out that the woman who cooked lunch for the staff had dreams of starting her own catering business. The company gave her a small business loan and became her first corporate client. Slowly, the walls between important people and unimportant people began to crumble. The office became a community. People learned each other's names, asked about each other's families, celebrated each other's victories, and supported each other through struggles. Other companies in Lagos started copying the model. It became a movement, the Gateman Revolution, some people called it. The simple but radical idea that every person in an organization, regardless of their position, deserves respect and recognition. But not everyone was happy about it. At a CEO forum in Ikoyi Hotel, Mrs. O found herself confronted by a fellow business leader, a man named Chief Okonkwo. He was old money, old power, old mindset. "This nonsense you're promoting," he said loudly, champagne in hand, his big belly straining against his expensive suit. "It's ridiculous. It's African nonsense. These people need to know their place. If we start treating them like equals, they'll forget how to respect authority." Mrs. O felt her old self rising up, wanting to snap back with something cutting. But Emmanuel's words echoed in her mind. She took a breath and spoke calmly. "Chief, let me ask you something. When you die, and you will die eventually, we all will, what do you think people will remember about you? Your money? Your houses? Your cars? Those things will be shared among relatives who will probably fight over them. What will remain is how you made people feel. The maid you spoke to with kindness, the driver you treated with dignity, the security guard whose children's school fees you helped pay. Those are the legacies that last." Chief Okonkwo laughed dismissively. "Philosophy, women's talk. This is business. We're here to make money, not to make friends with the help." An older woman, sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Her name was Mrs. Adebayo, and she owned one of the largest manufacturing companies in West Africa. "Chief Okonkwo, I used to think exactly like you. 20 years I ran my company with an iron fist. I was hard, I was demanding, I was respected, or so I thought." She stood up, walking slowly to the center of the room. "Then I got sick, cancer. I spent 8 months in and out of hospitals. My executive sent flowers and cards, very professional. But you know who actually took care of me? My housekeeper. The woman I had employed for 15 years and barely knew. She cooked for me, cleaned for me, sat with me when I was scared at 3 in the morning. She prayed for me when I thought I was dying." Her voice cracked with emotion. "I had been paying her minimum wage for 15 years. I had never asked about her life, her dreams, her struggles. And yet, she loved me enough to care for me when I was at my weakest. That's when I understood. The way we treat people has nothing to do with their productivity or their usefulness to us. It has everything to do with our own humanity." The room fell silent. Even Chief Okonkwo had no response. Mrs. Adebayo continued, "Mrs. Okafor is right. The Gateman Revolution, as people are calling it, isn't about business strategy. It's about remembering that we're all human beings, that success without compassion is failure, that power without kindness is tyranny." Chief Okonkwo left the forum barely, grumbling about women and their emotions. But several other CEOs approached Mrs. O afterwards, asking how they could implement similar changes in their companies. Meanwhile, Emmanuel's charity work expanded. With the publicity from the television interview, donations poured in, but he remained hands-on, personally involved in every project. He would visit the schools his foundation built, sitting in classrooms with children, asking them about their dreams. One day, in a small school in Makoko, the floating slum on Lagos Lagoon, a 10-year-old boy asked him, "Sir, if you're so rich and so educated, why do you work as a gateman?" Emmanuel sat down on one of the small classroom benches, his old bones creaking. "Because, my son,
I learned that the most important thing in life is not what you achieve, but who you become while achieving it. I could sit in a big office and feel important, or I could open a gate and remember that service is the highest calling. I could give speeches to important people, or I could have conversations with regular people and learn the truth about life. The boy thought about this carefully. So being a gateman is good? Being anything is good if you do it with dignity and purpose. Whether you're a gateman or a president, a cleaner or a CEO, what matters is how you treat people. What matters is that you never forget your humanity and you never fail to recognize the humanity in others. Another child raised her hand. Professor, my mama says rich people are wicked. Is that true? Emmanuel smiled sadly. No, my dear. Rich people are not wicked. Poor people are not saints. We're all just people. Some of us have more money, some have less. But money doesn't make you good or bad. Your choices make you who you are. I've met rich people with hearts of gold and poor people with hearts of stone. I've met poor people who would share their last meal and rich people who can't spare 5 minutes for anyone. He stood up slowly. What your mama probably means is that sometimes when people become rich, they forget where they came from. They forget how to be kind. They forget how to see other people. But that's not because they're rich. That's because they lost their way. And you can lose your way whether you're rich or poor. Back at Mrs. O's mansion, something beautiful was developing. Emmanuel had started what he called gate conversations. Every Saturday afternoon, people from the neighborhood would gather at the gate. Some were other security guards. Some were domestic workers. Some were drivers. Some were unemployed youth. Some were small business owners.